Good morning, students. Today, our class we can start with the sample preparation method for term, that is transmission electron microscope. In the last class, we have learned about the transmission electron microscope, its working, its parts, etc. So, we can see what are the methods need to prepare the specimen to be observed under the transmission electron microscope. First step is the fixation. In fixation, we need to give more importance to some criterias. Which are those criterias? First one, we should not we should not alter the cell structure while fixing that specimen. We should not alter the cell structure. And second criteria is we should not create any artifact in the tissues. Artifact means what? We are using some fixative on the specimen. It may lead to some additional projection or swelling over the specimen. That additional swelling or projection that happened during fixation process is called artifact. That should be avoided. So, a fixative should not create any artifact in the tissues. The common fixatives that are used are glutaraldehyde and osmium tetroxide. These are the two common fixatives used in term. Next step is embedding. Embedding means for giving a supporting material in the gaps of specimen. For this, before that, we need to dehydrate the specimen. Dehydrate means remove the water content of the specimen. First remove the water content, then fill the gaps in the specimen with the supporting material. That supporting material, as a supporting material, commonly we are using epoxy resins. Epoxy resins like Ippon and araldite. Ippon and araldite like epoxy resins are commonly used as the supporting materials to fill the gaps in the specimen. Second is the sectioning. Sectioning, as the name implies, is we need to we need to make fine sections that to be observed in the term. That sectioning is done by ultra microtome. Is another sophisticated instrument that we will learn in the later section of the same chapter. So now you just hear the term ultra microtome. Microtome has a finely polished diamond face knife in that, and using that knife we are making the fine sections. And the sections that we made using that knife fall on a trough of water that is placed behind the knife edge. Where that sections are falling? Falling in a trough of water placed behind the knife's edge. And next slide. Next slide. These sections are then collected over a grid. Grid is the material. Maybe round or rectangular. Is mesh like some area in the center of this grid. And in this grid, this sectioned specimen is collected. And the best thickness for the specimen that to be observed under term is 60 to 90 nanometer thickness. And after doing this, we need to stain the specimen. For staining, we are not using any chemical. Here, we are using some salts of heavy metals. Commonly, lead hydroxide, lead citrate, uranyl acetate, etc. These are used as stain for staining the specimen in transmission electron microscope. And how this staining is doing here? We are dropping that heavy metal solution over the specimen that is placed over this grid, and by applying that heavy metal solution over the specimen, that its material parts of that heavy metal solution stick on the specimen surface and make it enough and give it enough atomic density to scatter the electron beam that is hitting on the specimen. Understand? As we pour drops of heavy metal solution over the specimen that is placed on the grid, that specimen will develop enough atomic density to scatter the electron beam for better observation. And in addition to this heavy metal solution, some metal tagged antibodies are also applied to the specimen to specimen to make it observable under the transmission electron microscope. So use metal tagged antibodies by way of some other materials can be used to react with the specific molecules in the tissue section. Okay, and make it observable under the transmission electron microscope. Then coming to negative staining. Negative as the name here implies negative. Something happening. Something is happening as opposite that we are actually deserve. Negative staining. Negative staining where it is usually where is the application, in which situation we are using negative staining to observe viruses, ribosomes, multi-subunit enzymes, etc. Our method here, we are not staining the specimen. Instead, the background is staining. And because of staining the background, while we observe the specimen through the term, it will the specimen will stands out of the background. Specimen will be stands out of the background. Stands out means specimen is very clear out of the dark background. That is in the negative staining. Next is shadow casting. Shadow casting is another method of staining. It's through casting shadow. So let's go and see what's happening there. In this shadow casting method, the procedure adopted is here present a evacuated chamber. Evacuated chamber means a chamber devoid of any type of gases or anything. It's vacant, and in that chamber present a grid. Grid means the grid bearing that specimens. And opposite to this grid, place a filament in association with carbon. And this filament is commonly made of platinum or lead. This is the arrangement. And in addition to this, this filament is positioned in such a way that its angle is oblique to the position of the grid bearing that specimen. Oblique means is while considering the angle of position of this filament, it is oblique to the position of the grid that is having the specimen. Understand? It is from opposite to the grid and also oblique to the grid. Two things. Opposite to the grid and also oblique to the grid that is bearing the specimen. Then we are heating this filament. On heating, it evaporates and deposit a metallic substance over the areas that is facing towards this filament. And the other area that is not facing to the filament is not coated by that metallic element, metallic substance. What's happening here? On evaporating this filament, it gets evaporated. On heating this filament, it gets evaporated and a metallic substance is coated on the surface of the specimens that are facing towards that filament. The other opposite side remain uncoated. And if we observe such a specimen through the term, in term, the areas that is coated with the metallic substance appears darker, and the opposite area, opposite side that devoid of any coating appears brighter. And we make that observation. If we record that observation in a photographic plate, we will get a negative image. Negative image means what we observed in the term is opposite to that we recorded in that photographic plate. Opposite means what? In term, we observe the uncoated areas brighter and coated areas darker. But if we record the image in a photographic plate, in what way we could see that the uncoated area appears dark and the coated area appears bright. This is a procedure used in shadow casting. Okay, next slide. The scanning electron microscope. Till now we are talking about the transmission electron microscope. Next is scanning. When comparing with the transmission electron microscope, there exists only one difference. In scanning electron microscope, the electron beam never passes through the specimen. It only scans the surface of the specimen. It only scans the surface of the specimen. And the arrangement and parts all are almost similar to the transmission electron microscope. Anyway, we can go and see which are the parts, how is it working. Here also an electron gun is there. I think everybody have studied the transmission electron microscope. Those who studied and understand very well the transmission electron microscope, for those it's very easy to understand. So, scanning electron microscope's parts, electron gun for emitting the electrons. That may be a cathode, and the electrons are emitting, and here present an anode for accelerating the phase speed of this electron beam, and this electron beam is passing through magnetic condenser lenses, and that condenser lenses that directs a sharp beam, specifies that beam to a confined position on the specimen. It's direct the beam to a narrow spot on the specimen. That's the function of the condenser lens. And here the condenser lens are of magnetic one. It directs the electron beam precisely on the specimen. Narrow the beam to fall on the specimen. That's the function of condenser lenses. And after passing the condenser lens, is passed through some scanning coils also. Scanning coils function is to deflect that beam. And as the beam hit on this specimen, here it's not passing through the specimen. But what's happening? Three changes are mostly happen to the electron beam that is hitting on the specimen. Which are that changes? First one, the electron beam that hits this specimen, some of that first beam that hitting the specimen is called the primary beam, electron beam, and some portion of that beam is, some portion of its energy is absorbed by the specimen and emitted another electron beam. That electron beam is called the secondary electron beam. Understand? Three type of changes is happening to the beam that falls on the specimen. I am talking now about the first change. The beam falls on the specimen, is some portion is absorbed by the specimen, and another form of electron beam is emanated from the specimen, and it's called the secondary electron beam. It is detected by a detector called the secondary electron detector. Understand? This is one thing. One form of change, one form of process that happens after the beam hit on the specimen. Then going to the second type. Second type means as the beam, electron beam hits on the surface of the specimen, that beam as such is reflected. That reflected beam is called backscattered electron beam, and it is detected by another type of detector called backscattered electron detector. In this, as the electron beam hit on the specimen, it is reflected without having any change. These are the two common type of detectors present in almost all scanning electron microscope. In third one is an X-ray detector. X-ray detector are only rarely found in scanning electron microscopes. What is happening there? As the electron beam hits on this specimen, the entire amount is absorbed by the specimen and no electron beam is emitted out. Instead, some X-ray radiations are emitted, and that for detecting that X-ray radiation present X-ray detectors. The presence of X-ray detectors in some only allows us to understand the composition of the material. It will not help us to understand about the surface or shape or anything about the specimen. Instead, only helps to understand the composition of the specimen. That's all about the scanning electron microscope. Next, we can see the working of scanning electron microscope, its principle in a video. So, you can go and see that.
Right hand picture, this one. The idea that we see here in this picture is that there is an electron gun which is the source of the electron, similar to the light microscope. There should be a source of light. So that electron, so let's talk about the comparison first because it will be better. So here in this comparison you can see here, just like the light source, we should have an electron source, and the electron source here is the electron gun, right? Now in the light microscope again we should have.
Here we have this video is talking about the comparison between light microscope and electron microscope. It's about the light microscope's arrangement, and it's about the electron microscope or scanning electron microscope. And also speaking about the difference in condenser lens. This here the condenser lens is made up of glass, we know, and here the condenser lenses all are magnetic lenses.
Some condenser lens which will focus all those lights down to the specimen properly. So we should have a condenser lens. Now the difference between the light and electron microscope in this context is the light microscope have lenses which are made up with glasses, but for electron microscope there should not be any glass lens. All the lenses that we find in case of electron microscope are made up with electromagnet. So they are magnetic lens. So these are the lens. This is another lens. So magnetic lenses. Okay. So there is a condenser magnetic lens which will condense the light to be properly focused to the specimen which is placed here in the stage. Right? The construction is slightly different. We are going to see it later. But the idea is always the same. There should be a light source. Here the source is electron. So electron source. Then we should have something which will narrow down those electrons to a particular point of our specimen. That is called as a condenser lens. So condenser lens will help those electrons to be narrowed down to a point of a specimen. It is narrowing it down to the specimen level. So once it is narrowing down to the specimen level here, now from this specimen level, this electron detector is present very close to the specimen level. But because once this electron beam, the condensed electron beam is hitting the surface area of the specimen, or it is hitting the specimen,
emits some
the fates of the electron, that's like the reflection of the electron, release of the electron, or absorption of the electron can take place. So whatever electron is released from here will be detected by the electron detector that is present. And there are more than one type of detector, more than one variety of detector are present to detect different types of electrons that are coming out. And by getting the different electrons, whether it's reflecting or absorbing, by looking at it, this detector is going to tell the monitor screen to construct, it is going to tell the CPU to construct this image of the molecule that is, or of the sample which is present. Now remember, in this case, as we are not using any light to illuminate, we cannot see any coloration. The only thing we can see here is to figure out what kind of surface this sample is having. Because mostly in case of scanning electron microscopy, the electron is applied to the surface of the object, and when it is coming down, it is reflected, or which angle it is reflected, or sometimes absorbed, whatever it is.
So in scanning electron microscope, we get a clear-cut idea about the nature of the surface of the specimen rather than in inner details. Mainly about its surface aspects.
We can measure that And by measuring that, we can tell what kind of surface that sample or specimen is having, right? That's the only thing we can do, because it's kind of indirect way to feel. Just like let's imagine the difference. I can give you one example for that. Let's say you can see something with your eye. When you see something with your eye, you see it in color. Now let's say you can't see with your eye. I just close your eye and put some let's say I just close your eye with a piece of cloth. I cover your eye with a piece of cloth. Then what I tell you, I'm going to give you a sample. I'm going to tell you what kind of surface that sample is having. Let's say I'm giving a stone. The only way to understand it is to use your hand over the surface of that stone, right? To figure out what kind of surface it is, whether it's even, it is round, or it is kind of uneven. So you can only tell it by touching it, feeling it. What you are doing then in that case, you're scanning the object. That's what is done by the scanning electron microscope, because the electrons are not going to tell you the color. They can't see anything. The way the process works is to reflection. Just like if it is reflected more, that means it is going more, so the surface is deeper. Now if it is reflected very fast, that means the surface is very closer. So by looking at this, the detector can detect it and can construct the image depend upon that. That's how the electron microscopy works. So if you look at here now, if this is the electron gun at the very beginning here, and this gun is firing electrons, there's electrons in the very beginning. There is an anode. Now the anode will attract negatively charged molecule, because the anode is itself positively charged, so it will attract the negatively charged particle. Like electron is a negatively charged,
and accelerates the
so electron will be attracted towards anode, and through that process they should be collimated, like they should be arranged together as like a strong beam. And for that they need this magnetic lens, like the condenser. This acts as the condenser here, because it will condense all the beams of electron that are coming in, so that they can be focused tightly in a particular point of the sample. So they are condensing. And this is also scanning coil for scanning into the TV or whatever. This is not very important. But the thing is here, once the condensation is done, and now it is placed to the specific area of the specimen, some amount of electron, as you can see, some amount of electron are scattered, which are detected by the secondary electron detector. Some amount of electrons are scattered, which are detected by backscatter.
Two types of detectors, secondary and backscattered, that I already discussed with you. So we can see that
Electron detector. So there are different electron detectors: backscatter detectors, secondary electron detectors. These are the major two types of electron detectors. Now there are a third type of detector, that's called the X-ray detector. That's also present because we can also find some X-ray radiating from the sample due to this electron absorption by the sample, right? But that's not present in all models of a scanning microscope. So that is the schematics. Now if we look at here about the scattering, the way we can see it here is that this is a specimen and the incident
now here is going to explain how the different types of electron beams are produced after hitting the electron beam on the specimen. I have already told you that three different types of beams are producing after the specimen being hit by the electron beam. First is secondary electron beam, second backscattered electron beam, and the third X-ray radiations. Three types of radiations or beams are produced after the specimen being hit by the electron beam. So we can go and see what hear this explanation about these three types of beams.
electrons are hitting onto the specimen. So once it is applied to the specimen, the most important scattering are first of all secondary electron scattering. What is secondary electron scattering? The thing is, if this is the specimen, and let's say this is the particular specimen that is present, now electrons are coming in. This is, let's say this is the electron coming in. Now the electron that is going out, let's say the electron that is going out, let's say this red one. The thing is, once this incident electron is hitting to the sample,
It's called
the
primary.
surface area of the samples are very much vulnerable to get that electron. The idea this electron is nothing but an energy, right? So they receive this energy source and they absorb the electron that are coming in, but they themselves release some electrons. The electron that are released by the surface region of the sample is called as a secondary electron. And the electron that is going inside, which is absorbed, are called as the primary electron that is coming in. So the electron they release from themselves that are called as secondary electron. And that secondary electron detection is very important. And there is a detector called secondary electron detector. Secondary electron, sorry, detection or detector, which will detect the secondary electron. Okay. Now, there is another type which is called backscattered electron. Backscattered electron is also important because in this case, the electron will be reflected, whatever electron is coming in. For example, let's say here again the sample, and let's say again this is a upcoming electron. Whatever is coming in, that same electron is coming out. Is just the reflection. No other electron from the specimen is coming. The electron whichever is coming in is going out. Reflection. That is called as a backscattered electron. So these are the backscattered electrons, and there is a backscattered
Detector.
electron detector to detect these backscattered electrons. So these are one of the most vital detections. And also some amount of electrons are absorbed. So if I draw it again,
Next
some
one,
amount of
explain about
electrons,
X-ray radiations.
they are absorbed. So no electrons are coming out. Simply they absorb the electron. Some region of the specimen can absorb the electron.
And
These are called,
X-rays.
and those absorption can give rise to specific X-ray radiation. So there can be an X-ray detector or may not be an X-ray detector. It depends on the different models that you're using, right? So sometimes this X-ray detection is not good or important for looking at the structure of the specimen. We can actually tell about what the specimen is made of by simple this X-ray detection, right? So simple as that. But the thing here is about the backscattered electron and the secondary electron. And the idea here, if I draw it again, say this is the specimen and this is the electron that is coming in. So the electron that are being released very fast from the surface area, let's say this is the area, they generally release the secondary electron, because the surface area very much vulnerable to get the electron, they
Okay,
absorb.
this much is enough. Enough. We understand the different
Right
types
hand
of
picture, this one.
beads. Okay. So we can go back to our slide. Next is about the specimen preparation for SEM. For preparing specimen for SEM also we need to give attention to some points. We should retain the original shape and surface properties of the specimens. We should not alter its original shape or its surface properties. And for that we need to extract the fluids that present inside the specimen. And normally, if we are simply dehydrate it, it will damage its surface properties because of the surface tension property of the fluid content that present in the specimen. What is surface tension? Surface tension is the strong bonding between the surface molecules of the solvent. A strong bonds exist. If we adopt any normal method to remove that solvent out of the specimen, it will damage the surface properties of the specimen. So the method that we are adopting, the principle we are using here is the critical point drying. What is we doing with this critical point drying is that there is a principle that is at a particular temperature and pressure, the density of vapor is equal to the density of the liquid for any solvent. We consider whatever solvent, for that solvent there exists a critical temperature and pressure. At that critical temperature and pressure, its vapor density and liquid density are equal. At that point, there exists no surface tension. And in that particular temperature and pressure, if we take off all the water, it will not alter the surface properties of that specimen. So, through critical point drying, we can extract all the fluid present in the specimen. So, before this critical point drying, first we are treating the specimen with a series of alcohols. And after this treatment, then we are applying the principle of critical point drying for taking off all the liquid or fluid matter from the specimen. After it dried properly, what we are next doing? After it is dried, it is coated with a thin layer of metal, maybe of carbon or gold. Why we are coating this thin layer of metal over the specimen after it got dried? With this thin coating, it is suitable and it becomes a good target for an electron beam to scan its surface. That's the purpose of coating that specimen with this metals after it get dry. This is specimen preparation for some. Then regarding the image formation. So for the image formation, suppose is the specimen and the electron beam is coming and the beam scans over the specimen surface and produce certain signals, and these signals are amplified by certain electron amplifiers and we get an intensified signal, and this signal is then observed or featured on a CRT, cathode ray tube. In cathode ray tube, there is a fluorescent screen, and the screen we got the image, and this image is nothing but the distribution map of intensity of signal based on the shape, based on the nature of the surface. There is a difference in the intensity of light coming out from different parts of this specimen. Based on that difference, the image is formed on this screen. So, the image formed here is a distribution map of what intensity of signal coming out from the specimen's surface. And here, there are two cathode ray tubes are used. One is for direct visual observation. Direct visual observation means using this cathode ray tube, we can observe the specimen during the time of focusing. We can decide at what point we need to take a photography. For that, we need to continuously view the specimen during the process of focusing everything. For that observation, there is one cathode ray tube during the process of observing that specimen. And the another cathode ray tube is there for taking the photography. That its use came when we fixed the correct focus, everything, we can see the specimen clearly. At that point, we can use the second cathode ray tube for taking the photography of that specimen. So, two cathode ray tubes are used here in the image formation in SEM. It's about the image formation. Think you understand. Next is about the resolving power of SEM. That resolving power depends on certain aspects. First is size of the electron spot. What about the electrons beam? What is the size of the spot that formed on the specimen? And the size of the spot, electron beam spot on the specimen depends on what? Wavelength of electrons and also the electron optical system and the optical properties. The resolving power depends on the size of the electron spot, which in turn depends on the wavelength of electron and electron's optical system. And also one more thing, to what extent that material interact with the beam, height. If it interacts much, then we get a good image. So these are the 3 points we need to give stress. We need to understand that determines the resolving power of the sum. That resolution range that falls normally for a sum is between 1 nanometer to 20 nanometer. And regarding next is about the magnification of sum. Magnification mainly we tell about the magnification of sum mainly depends on the value, the ratio of dimension of the raster on the specimen and raster on the display device. Raster means distance between two closely placed points on the specimen, and similar raster on the display device means distance between two pixel units in the display unit. If the distance between two pixel points that is bigger, that means that much better magnification we can obtain out of the specimen. Understand? If the raster on the specimen, the distance between 2 points of the specimen may be small, and the same unit that is in the display device, distance between 2 pixel unit in the display device, it is bigger, then we can get a good magnified image of the object. So that magnification depends upon ratio of dimension of the raster on the specimen and the raster on the display device. The small unit in the specimen can be viewed bigger in the screen. That much for today's section. Thank you.